For the first time since 2007, Louisville has beaten Kentucky by more than one bucket. U of L's absolutely best performance in the Kentucky Louisville rivalry in, well, over 15 years, I'd argue. And Louisville fans could not be happier and absolutely thrilled of the game. This is Floyd Treat's Finest. We're going to be breaking down all of it. He's former Louisville assistant Mark Lieberman. I'm Jack Grossman. Again, Floyd Treat's Finest, part of the Field of 68 podcast network. Follow us on Twitter at Coach Lieberman. I'm at Jack Grossman 97. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you're consuming this. Coach, absolutely monumental performance. Louisville played with, I think, the better game plan. Louisville was the aggressor. Louisville had the best players. Louisville was able to make the plays when it mattered most. And it has to feel good for Louisville fans to kind of get that monkey off their back and get a huge win over their in-state rival.
Jack, we're both wearing red today. And I'll tell you what a fun game to begin with, right? Just fun for people just watching. And forget people who are even Kentucky and Louisville fans. It's just a fun game, up and down, and it just was exciting. But yeah, like I was so impressed with Louisville, and honestly, Jack, I was perplexed almost with what Kentucky was trying to do at times. And you and I had talked previously about, hey, you go into a game and you have a scouting report, you have a plan, you meet with your staff, you decide, okay, this is what we got to take away, this is what we're going to do. You're not going to be able to take everything away against good teams. You're just a little surprised at how Kentucky was guarding certain actions. You and I talked about it before we came on the air, and surprising with a lot of stuff that I saw in the game.
Yeah, and if you're going to make those mistakes, whether it be game plan wise or just players not doing what they're supposed to, we found out last night or on Tuesday night, Louisville's absolutely going to burn you. I thought, even early on, UK helps on through in the post and left Conwell open for a three. That's the first field goal of the game. They lost Conwell on a fade screen a couple possessions later for another three. It was a clinic of, one, Louisville running great stuff. Don't get us wrong, but also Kentucky overhelping, hesitating on the perimeter, committing too much to the bigs, and Louisville just burning them again and again and again beyond the perimeter. And I think that's a big reason why Louisville was able to build a 20-point lead at one point in this game.
Jack, when I go into a scout, and especially against a team that's like Louisville, that has constant movement, that's playing, maybe not a lot of sets. Now, they ran a tremendous set out of a timeout in the second half where McNeely has a wide open three and so on. But, you go into a game and you tell your players, first off, Jack, expect to be screened or cut on every play. And that's something against a Louisville team you have to expect. Whether it's out of the zooms, the dribble handoffs, the fades, it's almost like the most dangerous player a lot of times is the passer. And the defender would just stand up and the fades were open, and then they're over helping, and then, they're out of position, and the drive-bys. It was just, and we talked about, look, if I'm Kentucky, I'm going into that game, I'm trying to really use my strength. Oweh and Aberdeen, just the guards, they're powerful. Maybe get some of those switches, play them out of the post those guys up, post my guys, try and let our offense help our defense where we could play in the half court against them. And it just seemed like, initially Kentucky just wants to get up and down. And then on defensive end, Jack, it was like there was some switching. They were, as you said, they were over helping where there's a drive and then, you could throw it to the bigs. I was just surprised how they were guarding those actions where you can have your bigs almost sit in the paint. Now, you know what? You got to take something away. Let's live with Khalifa. Let's live with Frew. Let's live with Pryor on the perimeter, Ruth's on the perimeter. And if they're going to be guys that are going to make jump shots, then so be it. But we're not going to let Brown, Conwell, and McNeely get off shots. And if they're going to drive into our bigs. They're going to drive into a wall. But those guys are going to be pressed up on the perimeter. And we're going to, whether you want to call it drop coverage, corral, zoning out, whatever you want to use, I'm having my bigs roam the lane. And I know this is after the fact, Jack, but I'm like, wow.
We went into this on when we recorded Friday night. You had the take of Kentucky needs to slow the game down and play in the half court. Kentucky very much did not try to slow the game down. They made the decision to run with Louisville. And I think what we learned is kind of what we thought going into it, but even to a bigger extreme. You can't make the decision to run with this Louisville team in college basketball this year. If you run with them, they're going to turn into a track meet. You're going to lose. I don't think there's a team in college basketball that can successfully beat Louisville at their game, especially when Louisville's shooting the ball the way they did on Tuesday night.
Jack, as we're talking, I'm making more notes about the game and just things that are just popping into my head because it never seemed like they stopped the ball early. And if you're going to do that, look, Kentucky wants to play that kind of pace in play, but it's just one of those things where, look, Louisville has better shooters, better guys that are going to just be off the bounce and get to the rim. Look, you saw Louisville early. They're saying, okay, knock down threes. We're not letting, we're over helping. We're not letting you get in the paint, but go ahead, shoot some jump shots. And you saw that early. And they didn't, they weren't switching a lot of those covers. They were blitzing out, but you know what? The help was early. And you're forcing skips and fades. You're saying, okay, throw it to the perimeter guys. And yeah, Lowe hit a couple threes and made some shots early, but then they kind of tightened up on him and they're saying, okay, the other guys are going to have to knock down shots. And it was almost like they were desperate. And yeah, I just really surprised with how Kentucky guarded them. But I'm also, let's sing the praises of Louisville basketball because this is a team. And again, a guy that I've highlighted and I've talked about in the coach's corner. I've talked about it with you. Frew to me is just an absolute beast, dog, whatever you want to say in positive terms. He does so many little things, and great defensive plays happen when someone makes a mistake, gets the big charge in the second half as well, and was in great position, great screening. I mean, the offensive rebounding by him, Louisville pulled down 13 offensive rebounds in the game. And for me, I just thought, he was tremendous. I was really impressed with him. And obviously, Mikel Brown, it's almost like that Kansas game was great for them because they realized, you know what? This is what we have to do. This is how we have to get better. Let's not just come down and let's move it, get to the second or third side. And they were so impressive last night.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with Mikel Brown. I want to get to Frew and Khalifa also because I think Louisville's bigs were a really big story as well. But Mikel Brown, I think the biggest play of the game, Kentucky, they were valiant in this one. They were able to whittle down that 20-point lead down to 88-84. And Louisville calls a timeout, and they come out, and what they did was they got Mikel Brown with Malachi Moreno on a switch, jab steps, blows by, gets an and one. Next
with his left hand as well.
With his left hand. 2:52 left. The next possession, they go back to Brown. He gets to the free throw line, two more free throws. Kentucky never got within two possessions again there. That's very much when you look at, again, the Louisville-Kentucky rivalry, how many times has everything come down to Louisville's been the scrappy team that's trying to come all the way back, and then Kentucky just gives it to John Wall or Brandon Knight or Tyler
NBA lottery
Ulis,
pick is all you have to say.
NBA lottery pick, and John Calipari would go make a play, go win us the game. In this game, it was Pat Kelsey and Louisville and Mikel Brown that had the player that could go and do that. And having the best player on the floor matters sometimes. And he was phenomenal all game. But when it got down to winning time, when Louisville had their backs against the wall, real game pressure on them, Mikel Brown delivered.
I couldn't say anything more positive about how he played, his poise throughout the game. Obviously, there's a gasp as he has this cramp in the second half and whatnot. But you talk about and just you look at his stat line. I mean, it doesn't even and his passing early on, how he's hitting those pocket passes, how they were, Kentucky was a little bit late and just the short rolls and then Frew just getting to the rim and Mikel Brown was on point with how he played. I mean, look, just you could see it early on. He was determined, and I think. I don't know if it was Seth Greenberg made a point that, even against Peterson in the first game, it's almost like mano a mano, trying to prove who's the better player. But I'll tell you what, if I'm one of the myriad of NBA scouts at that game, I'm like, wow, this kid is phenomenal because he can get wherever he wants. And when you could shoot the ball like that, I mean, just overly impressive. And again, I'm watching him defensively. Like, he is catching moves. He's staying in front of guys. He had a disposition last night on the defensive end that to me was so impressive.
Yeah, I mean they could give him on the offensive end, they could give him the ball whatever he wanted. And he could go get a bucket or make a play, get someone an open look. And defensively, I mean, that's kind of probably the bigger question. We knew what you could do offensively. Can you come in and be that guy on the defensive end? And he was a big part of Louisville, really setting that pressure, making Kentucky a little, uncomfortable and really not allowing Kentucky to get into the flow that they wanted to on that end of the floor. And that was, you know, uh, Louisville defensively, yes, they gave up what 88 points or whatever it was,
Yeah,
but
they gave it. And listen, in a game like that,
high
what
possession,
you go up
incredibly high
16
possession.
exactly. So when you're shooting the ball within 10 seconds, and no matter what, and that's kind of like, but that's the beauty of Coach Kelsey's offense and the way they play. They're not living in their fears. They're not saying, okay, we're not playing not to lose. We're looking at the clock. We're still going. And it's like they had some good opportunities. Obviously, we're not even talking about the free throws they missed at the end, but they're not going to change that style. You're just going to have to stay. That means, what's going to happen? Sometimes you're going to have a missed long shot. Team's going to get a rebound. You're going to have a turnover, even though they only had 6. They took care of the ball, and their offense helped their defense where they turned over Kentucky 14 times. But that's the way they're going to play. So they're not going to just say, okay, we're going to look at the clock and slow it down and so on, which is what you need to do to play Louisville. You got to make them have to guard for 20 seconds. And you know what? You might find something. You might get that switch. And there were some times where that ball pressure was tremendous, Jack, because they had some switches and the bigs were in the post. And there was a couple times. I mean, you had Woolley one time guarding a post. They couldn't get the ball inside because the ball pressure on the perimeter was fantastic. So, look, it was from Mikel Brown. I thought he just was the head of the snake, and he was just tremendous.
Yeah, and I'd say I thought Ryan Conwell really set the tone early as well too. I don't think you can underestimate his importance to this game. Being the veteran who's played in big games before, I mean, he's the one. He hit 2 threes early on, like we mentioned. They forced the turnover on the very first possession of the ball game to
Yeah,
kind of set a tone. And
he gets a steal. Yeah,
yeah,
he was in the right spots. And I, you said this, and we know this. He's coming from Virginia. He knows how to play off the ball defensively. So,
McNeely, yes,
yeah, McNeely is just great. Yep.
yeah. McNeely was great. Combo was great. I really thought Louisville had, Denzel Aberdeen had a big game for Kentucky. Chandler hit some shots, but Otega Owe didn't have a great game. Louisville did a really good job on him. What you see that Louisville was able to kind of get him uncomfortable? Forcing the 5 turnovers, only 12 points.
Well, sometimes the most uncomfortable a player can be is when they have space, when they're not guarded closely and so on, where players want that. They want to have tight where they can put a guy in their hip and beat the first guy, get to the second guy. But you saw early on, it's like, okay, go ahead. It's almost like, look, go ahead, shoot a jump shot. We're not letting you drive. And, their coverage on him, wherever he was, look, Louisville really shrinks gaps. And I've never used the term pack line. It's okay. Look, I'm not one of those negative Nancy's with the term.
People around the area hate the term
I'm
pack
aware,
line.
just because it was right. We're privy to that stuff. But look, to me, it's about playing off the ball, shrinking gaps. You're connected. You're making sure if no one's getting beat. You're not letting guys split you and so on. And they just did a fantastic job where Kentucky was able to get out and run sometimes in transition, and so on, and some of that size. But honestly, like how look, when you're unselfish defensively, Jack, that is paramount if you want to be a great defensive team. So if you're pressuring the ball and you're worried about, if I'm pressuring, I don't really want to pressure because I'm worried about a guy getting by me. No, I mean, they were really, up on, and they didn't change some of that coverages. They're blitzing. They had, a few switches, but it wasn't a problem because of the ball pressure. And on the ball makes you a very good team. Off the ball wins championships. And I'm not going to be hyperbolic here where I tell you that this team is a legitimate Final Four team. I mean, they're only going to get better. And I think they're defensively going to get better. And they don't need to have just per se a shot blocker because they're so good off the ball. And their bigs, look, they're doing a heck of a job.
Yeah, I mean, sky's the limit for this team. There's no question about that. It's only November 12th when we record this podcast, so they have a lot of time on space to get better as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the way you look at it. Taking the optimistic approach, they're going to improve. And if this team stays healthy, I mean, with their depth, and that's what you have when you bring in a Woolley and Khalifa and Rogers, and eventually it's going to be Roots off the bench and so on, and Case and Pryor. I mean, my gosh, right? You're not going to have much of a drop off, when you bring in some guys because this pace of play, guys, you're gonna early on, you're gonna get cramps. Not maybe not in January and
Right,
February, but right now.
and also, this shows Louisville's depth as well. Everyone kind of has the mini heart attack when Brown goes out with the cramps for a couple minutes. Louisville outscored Kentucky 7-4 in that stretch. They had other dudes step up and make plays to where in a short burst
Mm-hmm.
you can survive without Mikel Brown, and that's where the depth shows. Kobe Rogers made some nice plays. Woolley was really good last night. You have other dudes that, yes, obviously you need Mikel Brown out there in the long run, but you can survive little bursts, whether it's just needing to give him a rest because you're playing as fast as you are, or you cramp up, or you have some foul trouble. Louisville showed they can survive that last night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When you have guys that are just it's not a major drop off. Those I think. Look, McNeely, Conwell, and Brown to me are pro players. They're guys that are going to get an opportunity to play in the league. I really believe that. And then you have guys like Woolley and Rogers who are good enough right now to be very good college basketball players and be impactful. So you're not like, oh boy, we've got to, if there's foul trouble. And you can play guys with 2 fouls in the first half because you know what? If they get a third, we've got guys. It's not going to be. We got guys that can come in and step in and play, and it's not going to change how we're playing. I think when you have that many guys that can handle the basketball, and great offensive teams, Jack, can pass, cut, and screen. And you tell me where they're lacking in that department. They're a great passing team. They're a great cutting team. They're a great screening team, and they get out and run. So for me, my gosh, they're very good in the half court, but they want to play out in transition. So if you do put them in the half court, I mean, my gosh, you're in trouble as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the only shot you have is to put them in the half court, but you're still not having a lot of good options, especially the way PK can scheme up things as well, whether it be in out of bounds situations or in the half court. They're just a tough guard, man. They're an incredibly tough guard. I don't know. I think I would not take the path of what Kentucky did
Yeah,
last
Jack.
night. I just
I'm again. We
yeah.
mentioned at the top of the show. I'm just perplexed. I think you go in, you have that kind of prep for this game, and it's not something you're putting pieces in throughout the summer, throughout your exhibition games, and when you're playing the Valpos of the world, the Nichols of the world, you're putting stuff in that this is what we have to do, and you're watching copious amounts of film to say, okay, when you go into this, scouting is not always knowing about, all right, what do they run offensively? Who are their good players? Obviously, we can't leave them. No, it's about, all right, how do we attack them defensively? How are we going to put them and compromise them? Is it going to be, we're going to switch, we're going to play it, we're going to try and really get high lows? I thought at times, you saw that. I saw, all right, you know what? When they went up, I think 21-19, and they started getting, they were more patient. They hit a couple guys down on the rim. I think it was Diabate with a
Diabate had one. Malcolm Moreno had one. Jalen Lowe was able to make a couple nice plays.
And then all of a sudden, you know what? Lowe's able to make a shot because they're so much worried about the bigs down low. So you know what? And what happens? Clock stops, and you get to the free throw line, or you make a shot. And again, that's where your offense helps your defense. You can get back in transition, and you're able to get set. And you know what? We're going to make them work. And that's where I would say, hey, let's play off the bigs. We're going to, whatever you're going into all your zooms, all your dribble handoffs, all your back cuts, where Owe gets back cut by Conwell. And I'm like, what are you guys doing, in the first half? And I'm like, just why are your big, and if your bigs are going to be up, Jack, you better absolutely smother the passer, whether it's Khalifa, whether it's Frew. And Frew was just doing a great job. And I know you want to get to the bigs. I just thought his screening, I mean, he sprints into every screen. What he does is so valuable. And so for me, if I'm Kentucky, I'm just saying, all right, look, this is not a game where we have the better players. We're just not, we don't have great shooters. Chandler started getting going in the second half, and Lowe, made some shots, obviously. But for me, this is not a game where, all right, from a perimeter standpoint, we've got some bullies with Aberdeen and Owe, but this is not a game where we're just going to be overmatched. So let's figure out where our strength is. And that's inside, and that's in where we have some dogs on the defensive end. So let's get back and know we can pressure where our bigs are in drop or in the paint, zoning out, and they can protect us.
Yeah, and again,
I was surprised.
I thought they let Louisville get way too comfortable, both at the start of the game and even at the start of the second half. I mean, they go on an 18-5 run, cut the lead to 5 right before halftime. Brown, has a drive to put them up 7 to where you're like, okay, it's going to be a battle in the second half. And then right at the start, they throw to Hadley in the short post where, the possession's basically broken down. Kentucky helps for no reason, and they give up a Louisville hits a wide open three. And then, the next a couple possessions later, it's they hit through on a short roll. Diabate kind of hesitates in the short quarter, and it leaves Hadley open for a three. And all of a sudden, it's a 14-point lead again, and all the work Kentucky did kind of gets erased. And Louisville's up flying up and down again. So no, I'm with you. I thought I was absolutely perplexed that Louisville got as many easy open rhythm threes as they did in that game.
Yeah, just look, it's early in the season, but it's not like you're not going to prepare for this game and
Right.
understand
And you saw
significance
the
of it.
way both coaches prepared for this game, because usually, again, we talked about it, this is kind of the first big litmus test game usually, but it's not the one that rides as much with the fan bases as Louisville, Kentucky does. And we saw, some truths come out just based off the rotations. I mean, for Louisville, Zugris, who's been a rotation guy, didn't see the floor. Kentucky, Jasper Johnson barely saw the floor. Cam Williams didn't see the floor until the second half, and maybe that was a mistake on Mark's part because he kind of sparked him a little bit. To where we kind of saw the rotation shorten a little bit, like we see in a big game, I didn't think
Yeah, they
Kentucky
went.
was prepared defensively at all
Yeah,
for what Louisville
and
wanted to
it
do.
seemed
Yeah,
late in the second half, they decided to go small, and they
yeah,
said, "Okay, we're going to do that," and that kind of changed the rhythm a little bit. But that's something where you're trying to figure that out before you go into a game like this, where I still feel playing the bigs, and for me, with their bigs, I mean, look, with Diabate playing 18 minutes for me, I mean, that to me, I thought he needs to be on the floor. He needs to be a guy that's going to be there, and whether again putting him in a position where he can change some shots at the rim, and where you have some dudes, you have some guys that are physical on the perimeter where they can really be physical and make and change, redirect some of the guards and so on. So yeah, just a surprising kind of way that Kentucky played this game. But again, I think Louisville did not do anything that they hadn't done the 4 previous games. I mean, it wasn't like, all right, we're still extending our pressure. We're still hedging hard and blitzing out on ball screens. We're still offensively, we're still sprinting and doing nothing's different. And again, no pickup points for Kentucky. It was just like, hey, nothing Louisville did. They said, okay, we're going to do what we do, and you got to stop us.
yeah. I want to bring about this. You mentioned Lowe had the 4-point play, put them up
Mm-hmm.
21-19. I wrote a note down at that point. Kentucky at that point was out rebounding Louisville 9-4 on the boards, and they were outscoring Louisville 12-6 in the paint. Louisville the rest of the game, because I wrote down, I was like, okay, if Kentucky wins this game, those numbers are probably going to stay pretty lopsided, and that's where Louisville's going to struggle. Louisville was +3 on the boards the rest of the game and +2 in the paint the rest of the game. So they were able to make the adjustments. And I know the bigs don't have everything to do that. There's a lot of ways to score in the paint. There's a lot of ways to get
Mm-hmm.
rebounds. And Louisville is a really, really good team round rebounding team. That's something that we've seen become a hallmark of Pat Kelsey's teams the first 2 years at Louisville, is that even when they didn't have a lot of size last year, they became a really good rebounding team, and they were able to hang with a bigger, more lengthier front court that Kentucky has on the boards to really kind of nerf that perceived advantage for UK. But Frew and Khalifa were so big in this game. You mentioned Frew earlier, and I have my thoughts on him as well. But what did those two do to really, take away Kentucky's perceived advantage in the front court and really play on both sides of the ball? I thought really, really good basketball.
Well, in the first half, you saw it with Frew setting those screens for Mikel, and then just either a short roll, a pocket pass, or a hard roll. And Mikel Brown found them, and he, not only just catching it, but finishing the play. And his rebound, but again, defensively, there's so many times he's in the right spot. Like his effort and energy, and it's enough. Look, you got to be a multiple effort guy. It's not enough just to blitz out, but recover back, be early with the help. Just again, defensive techniques with swiping and where he was defensively. I just thought, and I've said this, I've sung his praises throughout the first 4 games about, hey, this guy defensively. Let's understand he's not Patrick Ewing. Don't expect 25 points and 15 rebounds. But you know what? This guy can play. And then offensively, look, his numbers, I mean, 10.7 rebounds. And Look, he had 2 blocks. I mean, that's what you're getting out of him in 25 minutes is great.
The
He
play
is.
where he got caught on a switch with Lowe in the first half and was able to
Mhm.
stay in front of him, get a block.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, that's damn impressive, man. That's really tough to do.
Yeah, look, there's going to be times where you have to late switch and you have to do that. And we did that with Gorgie at times. And Gorgie understood angles and length. And you know what? That's a disposition to me, no matter what. That's a mindset. Not tonight. You're not getting by me. And again, he's contesting threes. He's getting out there. There's a couple times on some late switches or whatnot and some late actions where he's going out and flying out and contesting without fouling. Just overly impressed with him. And he's going to be a huge factor for this team. And he's only going to get better. And then playing with these guys and not knowing these guys, and not really having a summer with them, and now coming back and really getting to get that synergy is great. And then what can you say about Khalifa? I mean, it's Drew Diener calls him, Magic Khalifa, because just with Magic Johnson and whatnot, just his passing ability and his reads. Look, he's to me, and again, defensively, he's going to do. He's solid. He's not the athlete that you expect him to just be all over the place and do different things. But whether he's getting out and his feet are in front on the hedge and recovering back and position wise, he's there. And you see him talking throughout the game. And when you have that, I mean, look, you have a guy that can talk and be the anchor. I mean, that's and letting guys know what's happening. That's what you want from your big. And then what can you say about his passing and his offensive and his ability, right? So to me, I'm gonna live with him shooting jump shots, but I'm not letting him be a dictator on those passing. And I was just, again, flabbergasted with Kentucky's inability to understand what he does well and try and take that away.
I mean, Pope tried to make an adjustment. It only lasted one play on it in the second half when Louisville's kind of in their big run to stretch the lead out to 20, where they blitzed Mikel Brown on a ball screen and took the point of we're not going to let you beat us. You can't really do that with Louisville, though. I guess, especially Khalifa's in the game. He's just sitting there like, okay, you have a dude
Well,
that's an elite passing big man in college basketball. You're going to give him a
right.
4-on-3 advantage.
You can't really do that with a really savvy point guard who knows how to make the right play.
Right. We
And
saw that
so
when Louisville tried to do that to Darren Peterson.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So with Mikel Brown, you're almost reverting back to, okay, if we do that, like again, he's going to be hunting and try and play hero ball. But you saw it. He's going to hit the lift. He's going to reverse it. He's going to make the easy play. He's going to hit singles. And passing takes the tension out of the game. So he's just going to make the easy play instead of trying to make a home run. And then, Kentucky, look, if you're going to do that, it's almost like, well, the other stuff wasn't working. Let's try this. And to me, it was all over the place with how they wanted to do different things. And it wasn't consistent. And I thought they would just get after it on the defensive end. If you're going to play that way, then we're just going to be, hey, we're just absolutely not going to let one guy beat it. But everybody was able to make plays and get, you talked about paint touches. The guards were getting in and being able to make plays and create for others as well.
Yeah, and then Khalifa defensively, you mentioned it, not the most athletic dude in the world. And Kentucky put him in a lot of ball screens. And
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, in his first little stint they struggled a little bit, but again, after Lowe has that 4-point play, Louisville goes on a 26-5 tear. Frew was in it for the first part, I believe. Then Khalifa was in the game for most of it, and a lot of it was Kentucky putting him in ball screen after ball screen, and he was able to recover and get back and take away an easy lob or a layup or a dunk. And I'm like, okay, again, you're not expecting it. Yeah, you said Patrick Ewing or Akeem Olajuwon. He's not going to be that on the defensive end, but just show the effort and show the ability to get back and not give up easy buckets. And I thought we saw that from Khalifa to where, okay, if you do those couple things, you can be a serviceable defender to keep you on the floor for extended periods of time to where you can do what you do best on the offensive end. Because if you're getting cooked defensively, Louisville's got a lot of dudes. They got other options they can go to that aren't as electric on the offensive end, but make sure you don't break down defensively. So Khalifa, the big question was, can he stay on the floor with his defense? And he was able to do that on Tuesday night, which was quite impressive, to be honest, from Ali Khalifa.
Oh, no doubt. And it's amazing that we have to talk about Akeem Olajuwon and Patrick Ewing because there's the days of the dominant posters seem to be the way of the dodo bird. But regardless, I'll tell you what, when Khalifa's on the floor, watch how engaged. And I was watching that, and when I watched it second time, Watch how engaged everybody is off the ball. They're in their stance. They're alert. They're two places at once. So they know, hey, you know what? We're going to be unselfish with Khalifa as well. We understand that we're going to be there to erase a mistake if he's a little bit late, and if our tag is going to be, active hands, and just all those different things are happening because this team is really connected. They're advanced right now defensively, so just imagine where they're going to be 2 months from now.
Yeah, and again, I can't get over how fun of a game that was to watch. I mean, we talked about it much more so last season than we did this season with what you think of the Louisville Kentucky basketball game, kind of the slugfest that Patino and Cal played for so many years, and then Mac wasn't exactly going up and down the same way, and obviously Kenny Payne was Kenny Payne, but you kind of grew to think of the basketball game as a bare knuckled half court beat the crap out of each other brawl. That's going to be in the 50s and the 60s. Louisville, Kentucky were almost to that point at halftime, the way they were flying up and down the court. You put Pat Kelsey and Mark Pope, especially when Mark Pope makes the decision to not try to slow the game down, and the way these two teams play basketball, it is one of the most visibly pleasing games that you can have in the sport right now. And you're trying to, I guess, rebuild the brand of the rivalry and all that stuff. We talk about how Louisville needs to hold their end and win the game, which they did on Tuesday night. The other thing is to have a game that visibly fun to watch. That's how the average college basketball, for the average sports fan, that's the type of game that they want to see. They want to see games in the 80s and the 90s. They want to see guys going up and down. They want to see lottery picks, making big plays in big spots. And for Louisville, Kentucky to be able to put on that show in the Yum Center on Tuesday night is great for the rivalry, great for the sport, and just an absolute blast for us to get to watch.
You know what else it's great for? Recruiting.
Yeah.
And even with guys to show that game to players who are going to eventually be in the transfer portal, to 5-star recruits, to watch a game like that. Wow, that's fun. Two games I really locked in on the last 4 days, St. John's and Alabama.
That was a great game also.
And this game, those are the two games I really broke down and watched a lot of. And for me, I mean, my gosh, like you talk about two really fun games that I'll tell you, look, I not the biggest NBA fans in the regular season. I enjoy the playoffs because I just see some plays guys are taking off. Guys weren't taking plays off in either one of those games. It's just it's breakneck, it's fast paced, it's guys getting after it, and it's just fun. It's fun to watch. Hey, you're playing your asses off on the offensive end, and defensively, you're doing the best you can to guard some really intricate stuff. And even if it's just simple with just getting out and running, but like how good of passing teams these guys are in reads, because what's the play the defense tells you to play, and they're just making great reads and they're making great plays, and you have players that are just like it's fun. You're right. So like last night for the average fan, it's tremendous, but for Louisville, what a tool to use in the recruiting aspect of it as well. Because look, this is still college athletics, so there's ways that you're going to say, hey, what can we're always thinking, what's our advantage? How do we get a leg up on people? And to see that, and then flash to Donovan Mitchell, and to flash to all those kind of things, and see all those type of plays. And with Kelsey, whoever he pissed off with just saying, hey, it's point guard you. Well, you know what? You got Mikel Brown. What point guards aren't going to want to come here and play that style?
There's a great Photoshop of our friend James Strebel that was going around last night. Host on ESPN 680 1057.
It's
best.
Of him. He's the best.
I love him. It's of him doing an L's up with a Cardinal shirt on and just says PGU on it. And I was like,
is that right? I didn't see it.
I'll send it to you.
Please do.
It was pretty great, but yeah, it also doesn't help you. It also doesn't hurt when a guy like Danny Ainge is sitting courtside scouting. I know
right. Yeah.
Ennis was sitting next to an NBA scout last night. I mean,
he tweeted something out, and and then you just see right. I think during the broadcast, Billis talks about there's 12 NBA executives here, and there's a plethora of them at home watching this game for that the ones who couldn't make it out. So, look. Those are all tools. Let's get back to the fact that, hey, you're always trying to see how you can get an advantage. And if you think this is not going to be on every time a kid's visiting or every time they're talking to somebody, all they have to do is show everything from this game.
And this really This feels like a new era too of the rivalry. Last year did too, even with Kentucky winning again, just with the style of play and all that stuff. But it's the first time again we talked about earlier. Like Louisville was the one that had the stud lottery pick at the end to make the plays, not Kentucky. Pat Kelsey was the one that out schemed Mark Pope. Though, like we're sitting here questioning why did Pope do this, Pope do that. And Pope was the one that had kind of, a little bit of a blow by handshake, does the 5 minute press conference, seems a little disgruntled. It's been a very long time since Louisville's put pressure, consistent pressure on Kentucky in the rivalry. And obviously it goes back to, we're not going to know this, the very long-term thing of can Louisville build momentum in this game moving forward, win in Rupp Arena, something they haven't done since 2007. That'll be a big question next year. But for now, it's got a feeling of a fresh air of, hey, you can hold your own in this game now. It's not this big daunting task where you can just go out there and be the better team for 40 minutes.
And Coach Kelsey talked about for it to be a rivalry, you got to win those games. You got to win those home games. And not only that, I mean, now it's a coin toss with every game. And look, I was on with Marcus Maben and Steve Rummage yesterday, and why the line was going up, and is somebody out? Line jumped to 6.5, and look, it got a little hairy for those who had Louisville from that standpoint because of all the missed free throws.
We'll try to give them the backdoor cover there.
Yeah, right. But they didn't stop defending even at the end of the game. They're engaged. But again, what a great tool for Louisville basketball. And you said it. You couldn't have encapsulated it better. That this is just it's just fun. It's fun to watch. There's not a. I think even during the game, I think whether it was Billis or whatnot, just saying this is fun. This is man. They don't have a chance. No one could breathe. It's just back and forth, and it's great.
I want to ask about this too, because since we're talking about, made me think of it with the free throws and all that stuff. There was a little bit of a key moment. It didn't end up mattering as much because Louisville missed the 2 free throws afterwards. Because it was the midst of that stretch where they missed 7 in a row, which you bet PK's gonna have them running a little bit after that. But Frew got an offensive rebound. They end up fouling. I think Conwell misses the 2 free throws. The ball gets knocked out of bounds. And what was a pretty 50-50 call. And Louisville ends up getting the benefit of it. It's Louisville ball. But Mark Pope couldn't challenge that call because he, I remember I was at work Tuesday night during the game. So I had it on in the office, and I'm watching with everyone I'm working with. And Pope used his challenge very early in the second half when they're down 15 or 16. I remember thinking at the time, having conversation with people at the office, I don't like that challenge there. Yeah, I think, that's a low percentage one. You're down a bunch right now. I would save that for later. And they ended up losing the challenge, so he doesn't have that available. And I think this is all just adjusting to the challenge system and having that in college basketball now. But you're sitting there with 51 seconds left, 7-point game. You could use a challenge and maybe get the ball back. Instead, Louisville ends up getting it and has a chance to ice it again more at the free throw line. So I thought the way Mark Pope used the challenge early, I wasn't really a fan of there. It has to be something completely deliberately clear for me to be challenging at that spot.
Well, it's so different in college basketball than any other sport because you're not having somebody upstairs tell you, hit you down on a headset and say, oh, yeah, it's definitely ours. Let's challenge this one. Let's have an analytics guy upstairs or a guy that's really just focused in on a challenge. From that standpoint, it's almost like a gut feeling. I was at the game. I was at the Georgia Tech Southeastern Louisiana game, and Southeastern Louisiana coach where I used to be at, and he's like, I think it's our ball. I'm going to challenge it. And it's simple as that. And they won it. But you know what?
Do they not have anyone on the bench with an iPad or something?
I mean,
is that not allowed at this point?
You are, but I don't know how quick that replay is or how quick the timing is, and that's a great point, Jack. So maybe that's part of it. But you better be 100% sure that it's ours, because if I was working for Rick Pitino still, and I got
what would he do to you if you told him to challenge at that?
Goodness gracious! I'm slinking away and turning my head if it's even asked the question of if it's our ball. But yeah, you better be 100% sure to get that, because because they've added that now to college basketball, you said it. If it comes down, I'm probably not going to challenge something to in my mindset to the last 4 minutes of the game, to the under 4 minute timeout. Like that to me is going to be, hey, that's crunch time. That's the time where if there's a missed call, I want to get it right. I'm not going to one possession. Look, every possession counts, but if it's something that early, I'm not going with it unless it's absolutely egregious and I know I can get that challenge back.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This,
Mm-hmm.
this is Louisville's biggest win since blank.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great one. My gosh. I mean, it's, Jack, you've got me tongue tied because I'll tell you what, with everything that was involved in this game, with the pressure that was mounting, that okay, we don't want to continue to lose to that team down the road, and everything involved this early on a national stage that you had. We talked about all the NBA scouts, Donovan Mitchell, and so on. I don't know. Maybe you have an answer. I'm trying to just. I'm sure as we get off here, I'll text you and say, "Wow, I could think of that one," but I can't think
I
of
have a
anything in
couple
the
thoughts.
last 10 years. Yeah, go ahead.
In the 2019-2020 season when they went to Cameron Indoor and beat Duke,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think this is bigger than that. But that was, Louisville's first time beating Duke at Duke as an ACC member. At that point, both teams are in the top 10. We didn't know that the tournament was going to be canceled. Then that to me is the last huge season defining legacy win Louisville's had. But I still think this one's bigger. Maybe,
This one is bigger to me.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree. Like maybe Patino's last Louisville Kentucky game with the Quinn Snyder game, when they were able to win that one, and what was a really really fun installment of it when Louisville had Mitchell and Deng Adele and Snyder had the game of his life. UK had Fox, Monk, and Bam. That was a really fun game. But that one didn't feel like that was a big win. That was a fun win, but that didn't feel like the monumental shift that Louisville fans are talking about with this one. That was like,
Jack,
okay.
yeah, I think I, I've already been used hyperbole earlier, and I don't think this is it. Maybe the biggest win since the national championship game against Michigan, because this now establishes that it's back, and there's no, you can't question it. There's no, we're not sure. This is now a team that is going to be right there in the hunt for a national championship, and this could be the watershed game as they go in. Because we talked about the recruiting, we talked about everything on a national stage. This game was going to be replayed for the next couple of years, because this is what every recruit wants to see. And you take all the little pieces from Mikel Brown to point guard you to the NBA execs to Donovan Mitchell to how they played to how much fun it was. I think this is the biggest game I can remember since winning the championship.
It was the first time they had sold out the Yum Center since the Patino era,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Wild.
staggering, absolutely staggering. So I mean, obviously, it's still very early in the season. This will be a win that will be, quad 1A type win for Louisville. It's something,
Oh, there you
yeah,
go. You into quad talks. I love it,
yeah.
Jack.
It's funny because, usually when you have a big game early in the season, the two things you talk about is litmus test and what it would mean for the resume. But with Louisville and Kentucky, that all kind of gets thrown out the window because of all the rivalry aspect of it. It's interesting to me how differently we talked about this game, rightfully so. Because again, it's the rivalry and all that aspect of it versus a normal like last year Louisville playing at Tennessee in the first week of the season.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much. You're not trying to let the cake bake, as Bobby B would say. It's not about later. It's about, okay, you have to win the game right now. But to take a bigger picture look just for a minute, Louisville has easily the biggest win of the Pat Kelsey era in their pocket now. A game, take all the rivalry aspect out of it. UK was number one in KenPom before the game. They're fourth now because that's going to change a bunch early in the season naturally. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a game that's going to be maybe the best win Louisville's going to get all year. I mean, and that includes even if they beat Duke. If they went at Duke, I think that would be a bigger resume win. But that's a big pillar when Louisville tries to build their resume
Mm-hmm.
for March. Having that win over Kentucky is so, 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 so big for that resume, for what it's going to look like later in the season. And for them to get a lot of their work done early. I mean, we talked about it last year. Yes, they ran what was a top 15 Indiana team off the floor, but that was a team that was not a resume win. West Virginia had some injuries where that ended up not being a resume win. And they had these chances which were tough because they were so depleted injury wise, couldn't take advantage of it, and that they ended up suffering because the ACC was so down last year also. Had a gaudy record, ended up as a 9 seed. This year, we've seen the ACC win some big games already. I mean, Carolina went out and beat Kansas. Heck, even last on Tuesday night, Wake Forest almost beat a really good Michigan team. I think the league is better, but still not a vintage ACC.
It's not vintage, but it's definitely much better.
Yes, but to get that win is going to help Louisville so much on Selection Sunday that they have that signature statement win that they didn't have last season.
Look, you go out, you beat Tennessee now, and then you have wins against
or Arkansas,
right? I mean, and now you're going into those games, and I always felt that. Look, just seeing this team, but if you're a Louisville fan now, you're not going to those games and saying, "Wow, I just hope we're in it." And now you're expecting to win, and you really believe in this. And the resume, wow, where this team could be, and we've talked about it. Where, man, as we get into the thralls of it in January and February, this team could be competing for a 1 or 2 seed.
Yeah, and the goal now is Final Four is Indianapolis. We all know that's the short and easy drive Louisville fans make. I'm sure a bunch of them will be making it in early December when they play Indiana as well. Yep. I mean, it's a fun non-conference schedule. I love, I still hated that the Kentucky game was this early. But yeah, obviously Kentucky on there. You got Memphis. You got Cincinnati coming up next week. You got Indiana on there. I love the Tennessee, obviously, as well. I love the regionality of Louisville's non-conference schedule. It's just so much fun.
Agreed. No, it certainly wasn't a situation where this team was going to live in their fears. They want to play everybody, and that's what you're seeing. Just watching even Creighton and Gonzaga last night. And by the way, I'll tell you what,
Gonzaga looked great last night.
They've looked great against Oklahoma. I watched them against Oklahoma, and then I watched last night's game. Next podcast, I might have to tweak my Final Four picks because I'll tell you what, that team is legit.
Yeah, and they'll get their shot against Kentucky in 3-4 weeks as well. Yep. I mean, Mark Few always loads up that non-conference schedule, which is fun. I left the office on Tuesday night, Coach, and I think it was an 8-point game at halftime. I was like, perfect. I'll go home. I'll listen to some of the post game stuff. Then I'll turn that on. By the time I got home, it went from being an 8-point game to Gonzaga was up, I think, 30.
Yeah, they won by 27
in the 15-minute drive. I was like, oh, okay, this is over.
I'm going to make my third hyperbolic statement. I think this might be his best defensive team.
I think it might be also. I mean, Ty and Grant Foster and the guards they got there.
Yeah, and there's no drop off on the offensive end. So I'll tell you what, this is next podcast we'll redo our Final Four grouping.
Oh, absolutely. That me, I love that. But
I know you do.
Yeah, the story of the day: Louisville beats Kentucky. Coach, any final thoughts on the Cards getting the big win in the battle for the Bluegrass?
We talked about what Kentucky didn't do, but again, let's just sing the praises of what Louisville basketball is and what they do. And it wasn't like they came out and said we're going to do things differently. They did what they've done, and it's only going to get better for what they're doing. So if you're a Louisville fan, it's an exciting time to watch this team throughout the season.
It's going to be a blast all year long. Can't wait to talk about it with you, Coach. For Mark Lieberman, I am Jack Grossman. Louisville gets the monkey off their back. A huge, huge win over in-state rival Kentucky. And as we've been saying, the sky's the limit for this team. Going to be a blast all year long. For Coach Lieberman, I'm Jack Grossman. This has been